Brighton are okay. I agree the worst is behind us. I do believe the worst is behind us. Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins. Yo, guys, what is going on? It is bright and early on Monday, August 3rd. Now, I don't know exactly when you guys are seeing this video. We're experimenting with some different times to see what's going to get us more clicks and whatnot. But hopefully this is a good experience for you. We're about 2 weeks in. This is our 7th episode, and I just wanted to thank all of you guys for tuning in. If any of you guys have checked out all of our previous 6 videos, huge shout out to you. Leave a comment, a like, subscribe down below. But we have some big things planned this week. It's our second NBA game breakdown. If anyone wanted to explain, you can go.
So today we are going to be looking at one of the series that really threatened that Big Three Heat throughout their entire run. And this is Pacers Heat Conference Finals 2012-2013. Now, the Heat were coming off of their first championship since 2006, LeBron's first championship in his career after defeating the Thunder in 2011-2012. And they actually found a new foe this year in the Indiana Pacers. And the Pacers were actually not a bad team in the previous years before. The season before, they beat them in the they only lost in the conference semifinals 4-2 to the Heat. So they really gave them a run for their money. So this is a series that we really want to look at because it was really one of the most exciting ones in the Miami Heat Big Three era after the Celtics and, Spurs series.
Yeah, so how the video worked a couple of weeks ago, our NBA breakdown, was I did a little bit of a rundown on the seasons for the two teams, and then the other guys talked about the game more specifically. So we'll have the same kind of system here, and I'll talk a little bit about each of these teams. Now, first with the upstart Indiana Pacers. Now, this was I would say, at least in my opinion, this was their first year and this is like the Paul George era, right? Because this year, prior to this, it was Danny Granger, right? He was the star on this team. It was clearly his squad. But this year, he had a pretty serious injury that knocked him out for all but 5 games this entire year. Even in those 5 games, he only played about 14.8 minutes per game. And this became Paul George's show. 79 games started, and nearly 38 minutes per game. So that's probably up in the top 3 or 5 in the entire league. Now, his efficiency wasn't incredible. He only shot 42% from the field and 36 from 3, which is solid. But this wasn't the Paul George we know and love today. However, he still put up 17 points per game, a young guy who played a really good defense on the Pacers, and that basically shaped their entire identity. Now, their other players were really good too. This was Roy Hibbert's season after he made the All-Star team. So in 2011-2012, Roy Hibbert was an All-Star. Again, this was a while ago. The Roy Hibbert that played in the Lakers and the Hornets and even the Pacers at the end isn't the same player. This Roy Hibbert was more athletic, kind of that true rim runner type. A guy who averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds, which maybe is a little lackluster for a guy his size, but he only played 29 minutes a game. And he was a force as a rim protector with 2.6 blocks per game. So truly one of the best defensive centers at the time. You're thinking about guys like Roy Hibbert and Dwight Howard in that same kind of conversation. Now, there was a lot of other guys on this team too. David West averaged 17.1, which kind of shocks some people. I mean, when I think of the Pacers, I'm not thinking about David West as their second leading scorer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And George Hill, who may or may not have been known at this time more for being the trade piece for Kawhi Leonard, but very good player. I mean, he's always been a good guy. 37% from 3, 14 points as their starting point guard. Assists weren't crazy high, 4.7, but that actually did lead the team. And when we're talking about the Pacers here, I mentioned it a little earlier. Their defensive identity was what made them the Pacers. They were actually the first team in defensive rating, at least unadjusted defensive rating. They were number 1. Offensively, though, you've already been seeing with some of the stats I've been throwing out there. Leading scorer was at 17 points. Anytime a team has David West as their number 2 scorer, you can't expect the greatest things from them. Also, the assist leader had 4.7. Anyway, their offensive rating was unadjusted again, was 20th in the league. So you can see there was a huge flaw with this team. And I think going into the playoffs, you did like what they had because of the defense, because of the youth, the athleticism. But this was clearly not the Miami Heat that I'll talk about in a second. Anyway, some of the key trades and acquisitions throughout the season. Before the season started in July, they traded Darren Collison to the Dallas Mavericks in a trade for Jan Mahimi, who played backup center for them. Not a huge player for them, but again, having that backup to a guy like Roy Hibbert, who still plays defense, is very valuable. Throughout the season, they didn't make any crazy trades or anything, but they did call up Miles Plumlee from the G League more than a few times. So you can if you want to call that a big time acquisition, that was it. So yeah, this is the first time I'm reading the transition list right here, or the transaction list. Kind of caught me off guard. Literally all of the transactions are just calling up Miles Plumlee. They did sign Sam Young in January of 2013. I know he played a little bit for them in the playoffs. But that was some Indiana Pacers, a defensive team, really an upstart squad. Now, this isn't the elite Pacers. This was before Paul George became a true star. But, they clearly had a foundation here. And then the Miami Heat, on the other hand, Keshav said this is the big three Heat, right? And they have LeBron, they have D-Wade, and they have Chris Bosh. LeBron averaged 27, D-Wade averaged 21, Bosh with 16.6, less than David West. Just on paper, what are you going to say? David West.
David West was incredible, especially for his age at 32 years old, just putting up those numbers and with around 8 rebounds is spectacular.
I love Chris Bosh, but is he overrated? Is that is a big question. David West, is he the most underrated player in NBA history?
The argument can be made.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, this is all a joke. But Chris Bosh 16.6, 10.9 for Ray Allen, and Mario Chalmers 8.6, 77 starts. So he played a lot for them. You know who's on the Miami Heat. They all did their thing, and the stats were legit for them as well, team ranking wise. Offensively, as you would expect, they were number 1 in offensive rating. Defensive rating was a little worse. They were 9th. But again, Pacers were 1st and 20th, and the Heat were 9th and 1st. So clearly they had the advantage on paper. They also had 17 more wins, 66 for the Heat versus 49 for the Pacers. Everything on paper would indicate that the Heat were the favorites, and they were. Margin of victory, nearly 8 for the Heat, and half of that for the Pacers at 4.02. So both of these teams are good, but it was clearly the Heat series to lose. And again, like the Pacers, not a whole lot in terms of acquisition mid-season. This is similar to the Clippers-Rockets deal where these teams are so good that they're not going to make big-time trades. They did add Chris Anderson. They signed him to a couple 10-day contracts, and then he ended up signing for the rest of the year. I would say that was pretty significant. And how you add a playoff contributor mid-season, it does qualify as meaningful.
Yeah.
Miles Plumlee is not. I was kidding about that as well. I don't think he did anything for them. But that was about it. They did. Their Miles Plumlee was Dexter Pittman, who was up and down the G League or the D League at the time. But yeah, so this Miami Heat team, they had everything you wanted. They had that championship pedigree. They were the number 1 team. They were the favorites. So this is 2012, 2013. So this is halfway through the whole big three. Or sorry,
this is the whole third year.
Era.
Third year, yeah.
Yeah, third year. So they have the experience. And they were coming off a championship, right? So this was the squad. They were expecting to repeat, and spoiler alert, they did win, but this was a challenging series for them.
And I know we're going to reveal this a little bit later, but just once you look at it statistically, we'll talk about this again later, but it's crazy how much the Heat underperformed and how much the Pacers actually overperformed this series. It would shock everyone. I would say the Pacers were giving the Heat a real run for their money in this series.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Again, 17 more wins. That's over a third of the Pacers win that entire season. The difference, it's huge.
Yeah, and this was the best Heat team in that era, right? They were 66-16. They had the 27-game winning streak.
They casually have Ray Allen sitting around. So I don't know what they were missing. And obviously, again, it did work out for them. But we'll get into the actual series. That's what made this really special.
Yeah. So should I start off with game one? Just a little breakdown of how that started, or do you want to? Chirag, do you want to explain the build-up for each of these teams to the series, just their background in the playoffs for this year?
Yeah, so looking at both of these teams, the Pacers finished season 49-32, so much better than what we expected. A lot better than last season. So the first round in these playoffs, they faced the Hawks, which is it was a decent playoff team. A lot of veteran guys. They won 4-2. The next playoff series, they played the Knicks, which Carmelo-led Knicks. The Knicks have always been a letdown in the playoffs, so not a huge surprise here. And then
the Knicks were the second seed in the East this year. They had won 54 games. It actually may have been a surprise to me because the Knicks were really good that year, I would say. I don't know. The Pacers really
you know how the Knicks are. You know how the Knicks are.
That's fair.
Generationally, just not good. It wasn't a surprise, honestly.
No.
It's never a surprise with the Knicks, yeah.
Looking at this Pacers. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and the Heat, it's like those first two rounds are not even worth mentioning because they just dominated.
Yeah.
At that point, yeah.
I will say though that the.
Yes, Eddie.
Okay, I guess I'll quickly say something. It was just a quick side note, but the Pacers finished with 49 wins, and their expected win-loss record, which I think factors in stuff like strength of schedule. It's more of like an aggregate look at the season as opposed to like a per game look, if that makes any sense. You look back at everything to see what things are looking like. They were actually expected for 52 wins. 3 wins might not seem significant, but that does show that there was room to improve, and they clearly improved in the playoffs.
I think part of that might be the injury of Danny Granger. You lose a little depth there, but
no, but I do
they
think
still a good season.
Expected win loss is something. This is not like a preseason prediction. I believe. I can't. It's more. I think it's an advanced stat, or at least this one I'm looking at. I believe it's a retrospective look on the season. It's like looking at their offensive rating, defensive rating, putting that together, like looking at strength of schedule and stuff, and then putting that together and seeing what they should have had. But yeah,
they were still a great team. They had a lot of they knew their identity at this point in the playoffs.
Simply explaining it, I think it says it's the number of games that a team should have won given all the things that they did statistically.
Yeah, it's a retrospective aggregate look.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chirag, can keep going.
And so at this point in the playoffs, they basically knew their identity, or what they were trying to do against the Heat. It was mostly trying to stop them defensively, and then offensively, they were not much of a three-point shooting team. Mostly with the guys like David West, Roy Hibbert was actually one of the leading scorers, and Paul George was a good jump shooter, same as George Hill, Lance Stevenson. But their identity was mostly mid-range and in the paint. And actually looking at some of the games later that we'll talk about, they really didn't shoot that many threes at all. Like it's actually an overwhelmingly low amount of threes that I found pretty interesting. But looking at the Heat, this was their best. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to your point about the threes in the regular season. Out of all of their eligible shooters, no one shot over 37%. So Paul George and George Hill shot 36%, 37%. Those were the two best shooters on the team. No one else exceeded that. So it clearly wasn't their MO.
Yeah, and basically only 3 guys shot threes on that team.
Yeah.
It was Lance, George Hill, and Paul George. So that's basically it.
And
especially in the playoffs.
But
But looking at this 2013 Miami team, star-studded, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh with the trio. They had a great bench with a lot of veteran players like obviously Ray Allen, Shane Battier, good defensive player. We can't forget Mario Chalmers. He's throughout Miami's that he was always disrespected for some reason. I don't understand why, but he was just a great guy. They and Mike Miller as well. A lot of 3-point shooters. A lot of guys that LeBron passed to in different situations. But
Yeah.
it was going into the series, you didn't really expect the Pacers to perform the way they did. Went to 7 games, which is especially surprising of how much the Heat dominated the past 2 rounds. So we'll be looking at some great. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, okay, yeah. I mean, looking at game 1, just because we want to kind of speed things up here. Game 1 was when you really saw that the Pacers had the potential to take the series far. So, I mean, the game was really close throughout, but where the real madness happens is in the fourth quarter. The Pacers, it's super tight in the last 7 minutes of that game. The Heat are up by 3 with 17 seconds remaining, and Paul George hits one of the craziest shots I've seen in a playoff game. It is just insane how far, and especially the way he shot it. It was almost off balance, and he just canned that one. And with 0.7 seconds left remaining, the game went to OT. And you actually see in the very end of the game when LeBron makes a game-winning layup, a blunder from from the Indiana defense, one of the best defenses in the league. It's a huge blunder. What they did there is, you have a man-to-man on LeBron, and Paul George just loses a step, and LeBron gets the bucket, and easy layup to win the game at the buzzer. And the Pacers were up by 1 here, so considering that if they were able to maybe stop the Heat here, they could have really changed the tide of the series and what would have happened here. And looking at the box score specific, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna, you can talk about the box score. I'll add something on after that.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the box score specifically, obviously Paul George stands out, but looking at Roy Hibbert and David West, I would say these 2 guys are also the 2 guys that really stepped up in this game. They both were very efficient. Roy Hibbert had 19 points on 50% shooting. David West, 26 points on 65% shooting. And they were really the biggest help to Paul George in the series. And Roy Hibbert actually averaged the most points for the Pacers in this series, averaging around 22 points a game. So you really see these 2 players stepping up and chipping in, which I would say is surprising considering, that Paul George, it's mainly his team. But looking on the Heat side of things, I mean, LeBron put up 30 points, did his usual thing, posted a triple-double. But this is something we maybe see in the entire series. D-Wade put up a pretty efficient 19 points, but I would say LeBron didn't really get as much help as he did in the previous series from his guys. Not saying help, but, those guys just didn't produce as well throughout the series.
I did want to say, though, the thing I was about to say earlier, Indiana worked super hard. I'm just looking at game 1 right now. Game 1, obviously, in any series sets the tone. Indiana, every single starter played at least 40 minutes, and that's pretty eye-opening, right? 5 guys playing 40 minutes.
Yeah.
For Miami, only 2 guys played 40. Yeah. It was James and LeBron, and it was D-Wade. Chris Bosh only played 35 in an overtime game. Foul trouble, I don't know. He had 3 fouls. I don't know when they occurred. Maybe that was a thing. But the bench for this team, Shane Battier played 31 minutes, Norris Cole 28, Ray Allen 22, and then you look at Indiana's bench, the highest played bench player for them was DJ Augustine at 14. So I think it's even more impressive looking back on this. So game 1, these Indiana guys worked their asses off, and they still stretched the series to what it ended up being 7 games, despite having this really, really hard-fought loss in game 1. Paul George only got 5-6 minutes off this entire game. He played LeBron minutes. As I said, he played 37 minutes per game in the regular season too, so he was worn out, I'm sure.
Yeah, he stepped up. Yeah, and you would think that a team would not be able to bounce back after this, but Chirag, when he explains game 2, will show that really wasn't the case for this Indiana team.
Yeah, so game 2, Pacers bounced back. It was a huge game for basically every player in the Pacers starting lineup. Every player scored more than 10 points. Roy Hibbert actually led the Pacers with 29 points. It's just crazy to think that, even 6-7 years ago, Roy Hibbert was posting up close to 30 in a playoff game. And now, I don't even know where Roy is. But yeah, it's same thing as game 1 in terms of minutes for this Pacers squad. For Miami, it was only LeBron basically in the starting lineup. He had 36, and then Wade and Bosh had 14 and 17 respectively. And there was basically not a lot of contribution from the bench either. So LeBron didn't get much help this game, but the Pacers, went with the strength in numbers approach. So another interesting thing was that the Pacers only shot 12 threes this game. I think in game 1 they shot 14, while in this game Miami shot 22, which is it's double, but like it's still pretty significant if you think about, in our NBA today, a team only shoots 12 threes. I think it's pretty crazy.
TJ Warren on his own shot 12 the other day. He made 9 of them, so a little Pacers connection.
The game's changed. I think.
Mm-hmm. And basically only 3 players on this Pacers team actually shoot threes. So it's crazy.
At the time, David West is a nice touch though. If he was playing this year, I wouldn't be shocked if he attempted more. He got a good mid-range.
I don't think they were focusing on it at the time, just because.
No, absolutely not.
It wasn't their focus on offense. Obviously, they won the game. They played well, but we saw like the flashes of the Pacers they played a team game. It's a common theme throughout the series.
Yeah, and I think as you said, they played a team game, and the Heat didn't really play it. The team game that they played the rest of the year. LeBron was averaged 29 points a game. He did LeBron things, but the second leading scorer in D Wade only averaged 15, which was, I would say, an underperformance on his part and an underperformance from the rest of the guys on that team. Right? It's the Pacers really just pulled together.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron literally scored 49% of their starting lineup's points. And I know that 2 of those guys aren't expected to be big-time scorers in Chalmers and Haslam, but D-Wade and Bosh combining for 31, you expect like D-Wade to get 31 on his own in the playoffs. A really good defensive approach. Frank Vogel, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, doing a great job today as well.
I also think it's crazy that the Pacers bench only scored basically 5 points. And their starting lineup,
minutes.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. I mean, looking at this roster, the Heat roster, there's so many shooters. So many very efficient shooters like Chalmers, Allen, Shane Battier, Mike Miller. And, they just didn't get points up the way they should have.
But I do think it's worth shouting out, like Pat Riley, the Heat. This is that kind of veteran bench you need. Like the Warriors, right? When they have in the Kevin Durant years, they had like a cheap veteran bench that really played well. This game is the exception, not the rule. These guys didn't do a whole lot, but again, Battier was good for them. Mike Miller was really solid. Ray Allen, Norris Cole these guys were all really valuable players for them.
Yeah.
So for them to lose a game like this kind of sucks. You don't expect it, right? You don't expect your bench guys or your 2 D-Wade, Chris Bosh guys to struggle.
Yeah. I mean, on paper, this is a championship team, and they went on to win.
They literally are, yeah.
But yeah. So the next game, the next 2 games actually weren't very notable. But actually, Game 4 was.
I think Indiana was surprising.
Yeah.
Before we skip over Game 4 though for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm on Game.
I was gonna say that Game 3. Yeah, I was gonna say about Game 3 though, real quick. As we were saying, the Heat didn't really have much, at least looking at the box score, team basketball being played in those first 2 games. But you see that Heat box score in Game 3 is loaded. LeBron put up 22, D-Wade put up 18, Mario Tron was 14, Bosh 15, Udonis Haslam with 17. So, contribution from all of the guys is what really made a difference for them. The Pacers had that too, but the Heat were just a better team who got contribution from better players.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird how there's multiple ways to the Heat have a lot of different ways to win. One of them is having your star LeBron LeBron actually only had 22, but you have your big guys do their job, and then you have everyone else produce. The other way you could do it is just have that big 3 take over Game 3 was a nice team win in that Indiana Pacers style where everyone contributes.
Yeah.
All 5 guys.
Yeah, and those are the flashes of the Pat Riley created team. Just if one of those guys, one of those role players pops off, it really can change the entirety of the game.
Game 4 though, Mario Chalmers popped off and didn't seem to matter too much in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, so the Heat, LeBron had 24, he did his job. Dwayne Wade kind of disappointing, 16, especially Chris Bosh had 7. Off the bench, Ray Allen had a decent game. Didn't shoot very efficiently, but looking at this Pacers starting lineup, it's just crazy. Basically there were 2 guys that scored 20. The other guy scored 19. Actually, Paul George was the lowest scoring starter. But once again, it's the Pacers. Their starting lineup basically dominated when they were on the court. They played heavy minutes. Paul George actually played 33, which is the lowest out of any starter. But even Hibbert scored 23. Just can't get over the fact that Hibbert could score 23 at one point in his career. But once again, Pacers went for mid-range paint type of offense. Only shot 14 threes. But Miami was disappointing in this one once again. Chris Bosh went 1 of 6. Dwayne Wade, he scored 16, but he went 5 from 15 from the field. Miami as a team shot 39%, which is just awful.
Yeah, I mean, also there's some other things to note. A lot of fouls in this game. I guess I haven't watched this game in a while, obviously, but for the Heat, it's understandable why they have so many fouls, probably late game fouling there. But the Pacers are playing really physical. They had 5 fouls. Lance Stevenson had 5, 4 for both David West and Paul George. Maybe Paul George only played 33 because of the foul trouble. So a lot of fouls between those guys. Guys on the bench, Sam Young, DJ Augustine, 6 between the 2 of them. So, yeah, this was a really physical, like you said, they were attacking the paint. Definitely how it was for both sides.
Yeah, LeBron got fouled out. I think this was the first time LeBron got fouled out in a playoff game. I'm not sure that's correct, but pretty significant. It was at the end of the game. But yeah, he still played 43 minutes. Dwayne Wade still played 37. But once again, we kind of see that the defense of the Pacers overwhelmed the Heat like no other team did in these playoffs, or maybe even the whole run. Maybe other than the Spurs, but yeah, it was just a great team win from the Pacers.
And then the next game, we are on Game 5 now. Game 5, another game in this whole seesaw series. A win for Miami, 90-79.
Can we talk about Udonis Haslem in this game? 8 for 9 from the field, 16 points. Wow. Look at him.
Career high for Udonis.
Yeah. Wow.
No.
You wouldn't expect that from Chris Bosh. Isn't performing, but Udonis is. Wow.
Yeah, Chris Bosh kind of playing that whole Kevin Love role. I hate to say it, but all-time great here.
Definitely, yeah. No disrespect, but it was just
same with Udonis, so all-time great for the Heat. Only had 3 rebounds though, which is a little odd. Even Chris Bosh only had 5 rebounds, so I don't really know what this team was doing. Chris Anderson out-rebounded Haslam almost had as many as Chris Bosh. Anything else in this game for the Pacers? Paul George took over.
Yeah, nothing. Paul George, David West, Roy Hibbert, those 3 guys stepping up.
Yeah, the Pacers Paul George's best game
to the
of
extent
series.
That would give him a win. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Huh?
This is probably Paul George's best, scoring performance overall. 11 rebounds, 5 assists. So Pacers. This series was a confusing series. To say the. It was just so many things happened. But looking at Game 6, Indiana comes back. Once again they play a team game. PG has 28. Roy Hibbert has 24. Just a great starting lineup performed. And for the Heat, once again, LeBron plays well. But then Chris Bosh, D. Wade, Mario Chalmers, and Haslam combined for 25. So
The defense for the Pacers once again stepping up. I honestly did not know Chris Bosh had this tough of a playoff. I was hoping for one game where he breaks out, but this game he had 5. What did he have last game? He had the 10 or less than that or something. But yeah, so I don't know if David West is responsible. I'm sure Hibbert is playing a huge role in the series. Yeah, so Paul George, Hibbert, the defense, even LeBron not having any crazy games for the Heat, and that can be attributed to Paul George. And D Wade, I'm sure that Lance Stevenson has been giving him a lot of trouble.
I think, and the common theme appeared once again in this game, like we talked about before. When these guys are really, all 5 guys are contributing what they can contribute to their fullest potential, is when a team does well, right? Paul George, 28, Roy Hibbert with 14, George Hill with 16 this game, and David West with 11. And the Heat didn't really do much as a team in this series. It was once again the LeBron show. D Wade only put up 10, and Rio only put up 10 as well.
And then actually Hibbert had 24, so even better than what he got on there. Lance Stevenson only 4 points, but he played really good defense this game.
yeah, and that's another knock on Bosh. Or I mean, I assume he's the one guarding Hibbert. And this whole series, Hibbert's been super efficient, scoring a lot of points, 20 plus. But yeah, it's the one downside, or the one weakness in this Heat team. It was their lack of a big that could guard someone, a 7'2" guy like Hibbert.
I said an underrated stat, very basic thing to look at though, is how many shots the opposing center is taking. Hibbert getting 20 attempts is not even the focal point in this offense. Says something about the Heat's interior defense. They clearly weren't physical enough. Hibbert's a good free throw shooter, but you still want to put him at the line more than 4 times. You don't want to let him get 20 shots up at the rim, especially when he's converting at a 55% clip for this game at least. But yeah, great big win for the Pacers here, and that led to a Game 7 in Miami.
And this was one of the most lopsided games in this series, definitely. Miami with the 23-point win, and you just see LeBron and D Wade here really carrying the load, right? 32 points for LeBron, 21 for D Wade. Chris Bosh with another disappointing performance on the offensive end. But the Pacers just underperformed as well. Paul George had his worst game of the series. He was the only starter with less than 10 points. And it was just that, I would say Paul George just really didn't step up in this last game. And George Hill had a bad shooting night as well. It was just rough for the Pacers here.
Yeah, Paul George also fouled out.
Yeah.
A little foul trouble for the Pacers. David West had 4, Hibbert had 5. Off the bench, Gerald Green actually got minutes for the first time in the series. Had 4 fouls somehow. But we saw the. Yeah, I have no idea.
Wait, what?
Oh my God.
In 10 minutes, Gerald Green had 4 fouls.
They literally just brought him in for the intentional fouls. Must have been.
I hope so. I hope so. But I mean, I don't think there were any intentional fouls.
Yeah, there could have been. You just hope that we're hoping for the best here for Joe. If he's fouling 4 times in 10 minutes, that would explain why he didn't play the entire series. He just didn't have a great season.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the same, the Heat stepped up. Not sure exactly what went wrong for the Pacers this game, but Paul George didn't. He only put up 9 shots, made 2. Just disappointing all around.
I also did want to. I was pulling up Chris Bosh's stats for this entire playoffs. He averaged a career playoff low of 12 points per game. It's probably even lower when looking at this series. So, yeah, they got away. LeBron was really consistent this series. No crazy games, but everything was solid. Every single win, he was the leading scorer, I believe. And then finally D Wade steps up. That was probably the turning point, or not the turning point, but the difference maker for this game. I mean, he wasn't exceptional or anything. He 7 of 17 for 21 points, but he did what he needed to do. And in the bench,
it was
7.
arguably his best in the series. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that says more about the lack of his lack of ability to shoot in this playoffs. He really struggled. But yeah, 21 is solid. And he did when it mattered the most too. So
yeah. Also, Pacers
just
shot the most threes. This game with 20. They had the worst percentage as well. So it just
desperate.
Yeah, I think this game kind of was a breaking point. As soon as Dwayne Wade started playing, half is what we'd expect from him. It changed the pace of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean the series is just overall. The reason I would say it's notable in this Heat era is just because I would say this is one of those times where the Heat got tested and they were surprised how well they were tested. Right, this Pacers team was not expected to do this, and they hadn't really been in like a super good playoff team in the previous years or anything. It was just an unexpected series, and Heat really avoided something that could have been really bad for them there.
Yeah, and the Heat also weren't really tested before this. Again, they were super good, didn't matter. But before this, they beat a Chicago Bulls team. This was way back, but they still didn't have Derrick Rose because of injuries. And the Bucks. The Bucks they swept in the first round. Did the Bucks even, like, who did they even have? They had Monte Ellis and Brandon Jennings, and Larry Sanders.
Yeah.
But again, but they didn't have a real test. I would say honestly, if they didn't play the Pacers here and have this like hard fought series victory where they really had to play well, which they ended up playing well at the end. I don't know, like things could have gone different in the finals. Having this test was probably a good thing.
Yeah, another thing is this was the emergence of Paul George as a superstar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
especially going into the next season, they went 56-26. And for me at least, this was the first time I saw Paul George kind of play at this level, competing with LeBron. Defending him on every time he goes down the court. And Paul George never turned out to obviously be the LeBron level player that I once thought he was. But
so 11 or you were 10. You were 10. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would take your.
Yeah, but this Pacers team, performed well, tested the Heat like no other team had so far in the playoffs, and we saw some weaknesses in the Heat defense, and their inability to play as a team. I guess that's the main thing. Mm-hmm. We saw some difficulties with that.
But yeah, I mean, a hard-fought victory. The next series obviously was the NBA Finals. This was all the semis. I don't even know if we said that, but this all happened in the semis. NBA Finals. Ray Allen, what he did, 4-3 series victory for the Miami Heat, and this was their final victory or their final championship in that three-peat era. And obviously, I mean, whole thing changed things, and I would say this was definitely a tone-setting win. Yeah, this is a great win, and a franchise-defining series too for the Pacers. Like I said, this was the start, and like Chirag said as well, the start of the whole Paul George era. This was the year. Then the next year they really broke out with 56 wins. So it was the end of the Roy Hibbert era, the Danny Granger era, and the start of the Paul George. Who else was there? Al Jefferson, but that's not the point of this video. Talk about that Pacers team, but good series for both teams. But great series. And if you guys enjoyed this, if you guys have any other comments about the series, leave it down below. But I think that'll just about do it for the 7th episode of TTP and the first episode of Bilbo Baggins, Martin Freeman, whatever we want to call it. All right. See you on Wednesday. Peace.